The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I organized Janet's personal tax documents for the third time this month. A task that had nothing to do with marketing education and everything to do with her treating unpaid interns as her personal administrative staff. The same Janet who'd promised my university advisor that our internship would provide valuable hands-on experience in digital marketing strategy and campaign development. My name is Alex, I'm 23, and I just learned that some supervisors view educational programs as sources of free labor. This is the story of how I discovered that intern protection laws exist for a reason. Alex, when you finish those tax forms, I need you to babysit my kids this afternoon while I'm in client meetings, Janet said casually, not looking up from her personal laptop where she was managing her online boutique business during company time. Babysitting. The latest addition to my educational internship responsibilities, which now included personal errands, household tasks, side business management, and childcare, everything except actual marketing work that might prepare me for a professional career. My phone buzzed with a text from my parent. How's the internship going? Learning valuable marketing skills? If only they knew that my most valuable learning experience had been discovering how labor laws are violated by supervisors who mistake educational programs for exploitation opportunities. I pulled out my documentation folder, now thick with evidence of Janet's systematic violations of intern protection regulations, photographs of personal tasks I'd been assigned, email chains showing non-educational work requests, timesheets proving I was working far beyond the legal limits for unpaid educational positions, and recordings of conversations where Janet explicitly acknowledged using interns for personal business projects. Alex, make sure you pick up my dry cleaning on your way back from lunch, Janet called out, adding another personal errand to my growing list of non-educational tasks. Janet, I actually need to discuss the scope of my internship responsibilities, I said, gathering the courage I'd been building for weeks. Some of these tasks don't seem aligned with the learning objectives we established with my university. Her expression hardened. Alex, internships are about learning work ethic and professional responsibility. If you're not willing to do what's necessary to succeed in the real world, maybe this program isn't right for you. The threat was clear: comply with exploitation or lose the college credit I needed for graduation. What Janet didn't understand was that her violations of intern protection laws had created a much bigger problem than one: students' academic requirements. Actually, Janet, I think we should review what internship programs are legally required to provide, I replied, pulling out printed copies of federal and state regulations governing unpaid educational positions. Legal requirements? She laughed dismissively. Alex, this is an internship, not a job. You're here to learn, and I'm teaching you how business really works. Business doesn't include personal childcare, tax preparation, and household errands, I said, consulting my documentation. According to the Department of Labor, unpaid internships must primarily benefit the intern, provide educational experiences similar to academic coursework, and not replace regular employee work. Janet's confident expression flickered as I laid out specific legal standards she'd been violating systematically. Where did you get this information? She asked, probably wondering why an intern knew more about employment law than she did. From my parent, I replied simply, who happens to be an employment attorney, specializing in intern rights and workplace exploitation. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Janet's personal business. Calls in the background, the same calls she'd been taking during company time while assigning her work responsibilities to unpaid interns. Your parent is a lawyer? Jana asked weakly. Senior partner at Jun and Associates, the firm that's currently handling 3 major cases against companies that exploit unpaid interns in violation of federal labor laws, I explained, pulling out business cards and case summaries my parent had given me when Janet's violations had become too egregious to ignore. I spread out the evidence I'd been collecting, documentation that painted a clear picture of systematic labor law violations, disguised as educational programming. This internship program violates every standard for legal unpaid positions, I continued, showing her the comparison between legitimate educational internships and exploitative arrangements like ours. You've used interns to replace regular employees, assigned personal tasks unrelated to marketing education, and created working conditions that primarily benefit your business rather than providing student learning opportunities. Janet stared at the legal documentation, probably calculating how much her labor violations could cost her in penalties and legal fees. Alex, I think there's been a misunderstanding about internship expectations, she said quickly, her tone shifting from authoritative to nervous. Maybe we should discuss restructuring your responsibilities to focus more on educational objectives. Too late for that, I replied, pulling out the final document she needed to see. I filed a complaint with the Department of Labor yesterday documenting 6 months of violations. They're opening an investigation into this internship program and your use of unpaid student labor for personal business activities. The complaint was comprehensive: every personal task, every violation of educational standards, every instance of Janet treating interns like free employees rather than students deserving meaningful educational experiences. You can't do this to me, Janet said, panic creeping into her voice. This internship program is how I manage my workload. Without interns handling routine tasks, I can't maintain my productivity levels. That's exactly the problem, I replied. You've been using students as unpaid employees to manage work you should be doing yourself or paying someone to handle. That's wage theft disguised as education. Over the following weeks, the Department of Labor investigation revealed the full scope of Janet's exploitation of the internship program. Not just my experiences, but systematic abuse of dozens of students over several years, all treated as free labor for personal and business tasks that provided no educational value. The violations documented in this case represent one of the most egregious examples of internship exploitation we've investigated, said Labor Department investigator Maria Rodriguez during her interview with me. Your documentation was crucial in establishing the pattern of abuse and protecting other students from similar treatment. The investigation resulted in significant penalties for Janet, requirements to restructure the internship program to meet legal educational standards, and reimbursement for students who'd been exploited as unpaid workers in violation of federal labor laws. Alex, your case has become a model for how students can protect themselves from internship exploitation, said my parent during one of our discussions about the legal resolution. The systematic documentation you maintained and the courage to report violations will help other students avoid similar abuse. 6 months later, I was working at a legitimate marketing firm where interns received meaningful educational experiences, proper supervision, and learning opportunities that actually prepared us for professional careers, everything Janet's program had failed to provide. The most valuable outcome wasn't the legal victory or financial compensation, but demonstrating that students deserve protection from supervisors who exploit educational programs for personal gain while providing nothing of educational value in return. Sometimes the best response to workplace exploitation isn't enduring abuse for academic credit, but ensuring that supervisors face consequences for treating students like free labor while failing to provide the educational experiences that justify unpaid positions. Janet learned that internship programs have legal requirements that protect students from exploitation, while I learned that documenting violations and understanding legal protections can transform individual abuse into systematic change that helps other students. The investigation's impact extended beyond Janet's individual violations into broader reforms of how internship programs were monitored and regulated across the marketing industry. My case became a catalyst for stronger oversight that protected other students from similar exploitation. Alex's documentation and legal action led to new requirements for internship program accreditation, explained Dr. Patricia Wong, Director of Career Services at my university. Companies now must demonstrate genuine educational value and proper supervision before being approved for student placement programs. The policy changes included mandatory training for internship supervisors, regular check-ins with participating students, and clear consequences for programs that violated educational standards or labor laws. We've seen a significant improvement in internship quality since implementing these oversight mechanisms, noted career counselor David Martinez. Students report meaningful learning experiences rather than exploitation disguised as education. The most significant development was the establishment of an anonymous reporting system that allowed students to document violations without fear of retaliation from supervisors who controlled their academic credit requirements. The reporting system has processed over 200 complaints in its first year, said Dr. Wong during our program review. We've terminated relationships with 15 companies that couldn't demonstrate legitimate educational programming for their interns. 6 months after the Department of Labor investigation concluded, I received a call from Janet requesting a meeting that revealed how completely her perspective had changed about internship supervision and student rights. Alex, I wanted to apologize personally for how I managed your internship, she said during our phone conversation, which I recorded for my own protection. I didn't understand the legal requirements for educational programming, or the difference between intern supervision and employee management. What changed your understanding? I asked, curious about her reflection process after facing significant legal and financial penalties for her violations. The Department of Labor investigation and mandatory supervisor training taught me that internships are supposed to benefit students, not exploit them, she admitted. I was using interns as free labor for personal projects while claiming to provide marketing education. I wasn't actually delivering. The acknowledgement was more comprehensive than I'd expected from someone whose exploitation had been so systematic and deliberate. Are you still supervising interns? I asked. Yes, but with completely restructured programming that focuses on genuine educational experiences, she replied. Interns now work on real marketing campaigns with proper mentorship. And I've eliminated all personal tasks that don't contribute to their professional development. 1 year after filing my initial complaint, I was invited to speak at a Department of Labor conference about intern rights and workplace exploitation, sharing strategies for documenting violations and protecting student interests within educational programs. Alex's case demonstrates that students have more power to address exploitation than they typically realize. I explained to an audience of labor investigators and employment attorneys proper documentation and understanding of legal protections can transform individual abuse into systematic change that benefits all students. The presentation included specific techniques for recognizing and documenting internship violations, resources for reporting exploitation, and legal frameworks that protected students from retaliation when they challenged abusive supervisors. What's the most important advice for students entering internship programs? Asked an audience member. Understand your rights, document everything, and remember that legitimate educational programs want to help you succeed professionally, I replied. If your internship feels like unpaid employment rather than learning opportunity, it probably violates labor laws and should be reported. 2 years later, my parents' law firm had expanded their intern rights practice to handle cases across multiple states, with my documentation methods becoming standard procedure for investigating educational program violations. Your systematic approach to evidence collection has become the template we use for all intern exploitation cases, my parent explained during one of our discussions about the ongoing impact of the Janet investigation. The documentation techniques you developed help other students build strong legal cases against abusive supervisors. The most meaningful recognition came from other students who wrote to thank me for creating awareness about intern rights and providing a model for challenging exploitation within educational programs. Your case taught me that I didn't have to accept unpaid overtime and personal errands as part of my internship experience, wrote marketing student Jennifer Chun. I reported my supervisor's violations using the methods you described, and the program was restructured to provide actual educational value. These testimonials demonstrated that individual legal action could create broader protection for vulnerable students who might not have understood their rights or known how to challenge abusive supervisors. 3 years after the initial investigation, the marketing industry had implemented comprehensive reforms to internship programming, including standardized educational requirements, supervisor certification programs, and regular auditing of student experiences. Alex's case became a turning point in how our industry approaches student education and professional development, said Marketing Association President Dr. Michael Rodriguez. The legal precedent established stronger standards that benefit both students and ethical employers who want to provide genuine learning opportunities. The reforms had eliminated the most egregious forms of intern exploitation while creating frameworks that supported legitimate educational programming between students and industry professionals. Sometimes the best response to systematic exploitation isn't silent endurance, but strategic legal action that protects not only yourself, but also future students who might face similar abuse from supervisors who mistake educational programs for sources of free labor. Janet had exploited my unpaid position because she believed students had no recourse against supervisors who controlled their academic credit, but my documentation and legal response had created protections that benefited thousands of other students seeking genuine educational experiences rather than disguised employment.